What's going on YouTube? Cardfight King here. So I'm here to bring you guys my Beelzemon deck profile for the EX-2 format. Now you guys have not seen Beelzemon on the channel since probably I think it was 1.0 when I released my Beelzemon Turbo build. I think I won a tournament with that build. So it's really nice to bring my favorite Digimon line back to the channel. As you guys know, Impmon's my favorite Digimon, so the fact that I get to play Beelstar and Beelzemon is really good. You guys know how I feel about Beelstar. She's the greatest. But I love this Beelzemon deck. The style of play is really good, and I believe there are two ways that you build the deck. There's the build where you focus more on the evil line, so building up a stack and then going into the EX2 Beelzemon, and then there's the build that I'm playing right now that I really like. Again, that is more akin to the BT1 Beelzemon Turbo build, which is the warp focus version, a build that is catered towards spamming out the field with impmons and catering towards warping into Beelzemon so you can get to him quickly, and then which lets you get to a faster blast mode. The deck I really like both versions of the deck, but this is probably my favorite version of the deck. It's a lot harder to play, and there's a lot more technical aspect that goes into it as far as matchup knowledge and in-game decisions, but it's really fun, really rewarding, and I truly love it. And I'm still working on the build, but I wanted to show you guys what I had and just some deck improvements I made since the Ultimate Cup, which I used this deck in last Saturday. So getting right into it, the Pokemon eggs. So the reason I'm running 4 Pokemon eggs now, now a 5th egg would be the Xiaomon. Shout out to my boy Eli Hill for the idea. Xiaomon is a really good card. 10 cards in trash, and you get retaliation on your turn. Really easy to get in this deck. But the reason why I'm only running 4 of the Pokemon is because I want to just get to the milling. Now, if you fear decking out, then this is not the deck for you. If you fear decking out, don't fear decking out. But again, you got to play it a little bit more meticulously, understand the situations that you're in. You can leave this card in the raising. You can build this card in the raising if that's what you want to do, if that's what the situation calls for. But what this card does is the same thing as a BT2 Impmon. It lets you play on your opponent's turn. If this card doesn't die when you swing into something with it, right? Then if your opponent does remove from the field, you get to mill 2. And in this, the way that this deck has improved since obviously BT1 is the fact that we now gain benefits from milling. This is the first time that we've actually had a benefit from milling cards from the top of our deck, which means that we have cards that gain us memory, we have cards that destroy cards, we have cards that let us play out extra cards, and so that's really what we needed, was cards that let us play on our opponent's turn and that rewards us for milling from the top of our deck. And I wanted to play this card because this is the card I want to open with every single time, especially when you get the BT2 Impmon, so that you can put a total of at least 7 cards in the trash, 7 cards in the trash on turn 1 or turn 2 rather. But again, playing on your opponent's turn when your opponent does use control cards to get rid of them, really good. For the rookies, 3 copies of Psychmon. Again, that's really just for the D-Reaper and Imperial matchup. D-Reaper is this deck's absolute hardest matchup because they don't have any levels and all of our destruction is level based. So I'm running 3 Psychmons just for that matchup alone. But Imperial, doubles for Imperial. 4 copies of the EX-2 Impmon. 4 copies of the BT2 Impmon, and then we have 4 copies of the Impmon from BT6. So we have pretty much 12 Impmons to work with, right guys? We got 12 Impmons here that we're working with. The EX2 Impmon is a really strong Impmon card because when you mill it, you can mill up to 3 cards. It's an optional mill, but up to 3 cards. And this card searches out your Iron Mako, which is your important tamer to get into blast mode easier, and it searches out a Beelzemon. Obviously, this is the BT2 Impmon Mill 3. You want to be able to mill 3. I got my tamer set, so I'm happy. You want to be able to mill 3 again. With the Pokemon Egg, you're milling a total of 5 cards. If you mill this Impmon, you can mill more. Now, if you mill this Impmon, this Impmon can't be milled with his own mill effect, but any other mill effects, you can do it. Now the BT6 Impmon, there's a lot of people that run this card at 2 or 3. For this version, again, I wanted to have as many Impmons as possible because, we run the Beelzemon, we're milling and whatnot, and I wanted to get Impmons to the board. But this Impmon is really important because it can get your Blastmon out the hand, it can add the Warp Beelzemon to play, then you can just go right into Beelzemon for the Warp play, right? When you call it out, if you mill a Beelzemon plays out on your opponent's turn, you can drop a card, grab a Beelzemon. Now you have a warp play set up, so your opponent's either going to have either the turn passes or your opponent has to get rid of this card using another card again, so it will cause a little bit of an overextension. There's just so many ways that this card is better in the early game now than it was, in other iterations of, decks, and that's why I'm running 4, because it's better in the early game. Again, for this style of deck, playing more towards the warp, he has more of a benefit to you early game than maybe in the Evo line build, where he may not have as much value to you in the earliest parts of the game. Because I believe in that version, you don't really want some of your stuff dying that often. You also run a different egg. You also run different eggs. So it's just a whole different style and philosophy altogether as far as how you want to get to your end game. For the level 4s, 3 Doberman, 2 Loey, and 2 Devimon. The Dobermon's in here because when it dies, again, it's the same as BT2. When it dies, mill 3, but I get to add a purple Digimon or a purple Tamer to my hand. A lot of times I'm using this to search out for the, hopefully grab the Iron Mako from the trash if I don't have it established. But if I do, then I'm usually grabbing like an Impmon or something for another follow-up play. Or you can grab a Loemon to save for the hybrid for gameplay later on. Again, hybrid for game, that's why we run it. Still really strong. And then Devimon is a 1-cost Evo blocker. It's in there just to slow down, stall out against like Imperial. Doesn't, the X-Vmon, jamming Vmon poke play, it really works against. And that's really why he's in here. He's also a 1-cost Evo, so if you do have your level 5s, whatever it is, it does help you climb a little easier and cycle for cheaper. But those are the level 4s. Level 5s, 1 Skull Satamon and 2 Rebellion. So again, I cut down on my 5s because, again, building up is not the total focus, but I still want to have that option of, if I need to build up, I can. The Skull Satamon mills 2, grabs a Demon Lord from your trash to your hand. That ability can mess you up if you don't have like a proper trash setup. For instance, if you mill a blast mode but you don't have any other Beelzemons in there, then that mill kind of hurts because you have to pick up the blast mode. And then since you do have to finish his ability to pick up a card, that means that depending on what your trash is looking like and what you mill, you can be picking up, like, let's say you pick up a blast mode or a Beelzemon you just milled because you have to, you can negate their own ability that procs when you mill it. So that's really why he's at 1. And if I was playing the Evo line build, he would be at a 4 of, and it'd be a totally different style, different deck altogether. But right now he's at 1, and we have the 2 Rebellions in here. The Rebellions in here purely because it can discard the blast mode from our hand, and it's a nice blocker again against Imperial to stave off some damage against Imperial and other faster type of decks if need be. So level 6s, we play 3 copies of the BT2 Secret Warping Beelzemon and 4 copies of the EX-2 Beelzemon. So this Beelzemon, when you have 10 cards in trash, you can digivolve him on top of an impmon for a cost of 4. So that can be a little bit expensive, but if you have your tamer out, you can choke your opponent at 1. Or with this deck, we have a lot of different ways of gaining extra memory, so we can definitely keep our turn going into him, and then do what we got to do. And then when you digivolve into him, you can pop a level 4 or lower Digimon. This is actually really good, like against people that leave out Terriermons, that leave out Bokomons, things like that. We can instantly just go here, pop, and then do what we got to do. And then the Beelzemon is really strong in this deck. You're going to play this in F4 in every iteration of Beelzemon, because when you mill it, you get to pull an Impmon out of the trash into the board. So again, this lets you, if you mill it, like if your opponent destroys like a Pokemon and you mill this card, you can bring back out, you can bring an Impmon out, and then like for instance, you can bring out the BT6 Impmon, discard a card in your hand, grab the warp. So now you have a warp play guaranteed for next turn. Or if you built in your raising, you can grab this Beelzemon so that you can digivolve into it on your, for the next turn. So there's just a lot of different plays this guy provides when you do mill him. And then when attacking, when digivolving, you can mill 2 and destroy level 3 or lower, increasing the level that you can destroy by 1 for every 10 in your trash. It kind of comes up, my ideal number for this deck is 20. More or less that's for Death Slinger and Blast Mode, because but when you have 20 in the trash, you can delete at least a level 5. Speaking of Blast Mode, I'm playing 3 copies of Blast Mode. So Blast Mode to me is a really strong card. With the warp, I feel like I can get into my Blast Mode a lot faster. Again, because your opponent only has so many ways they could deal with a level 6 on the board. But with Blast Mode, what he does is that when he's trash, you can destroy level 4 or lower. So again, when I was playing him at 2 in this version of the deck, when I don't see the Blast Mode, especially for the setups I had, it really hurt, especially running him at 2, because you'll have 1 stuck in security, you'll have 1 that is at the bottom of your deck, and it's so running 3, and he really hasn't been a clog because I have multiple ways of getting him out of my hand. But what Blast Mode does is, when he's milled, just pop a level 4 lower. When you digivolve into him, you blow up all their Digimon that have the current highest level on their board. And then when attacking, security attack +1 for every 10 in your trash. Ideally, I want 20. Remember, 20 is my magic number for this deck. 20 means he checks 3. Right now, depending on the game state and how you're managing your opponent, where your opponent's damage is at, anything like that, under 20, so you can control your milling that way. Under 20 can be fine, because if he's checking 2 and that's all your opponent's security, that's all your opponent's security left, because you have other options of dealing damage, then that's fine. Again, this deck is a lot more technical, and you want to make sure you're making the right in-game decisions for it. But for me, like I said, 20 is my ideal number that I want in the trash for this deck. And he does hard digivolve for 6, so sometimes you just okay, cool. Here, let me just drop him for 6, blow up something. I'm not ready to attack yet. Go ahead. So then getting into the option cards for Death Slinger. So I was running it at less before is really good. When you mill it, you gain a memory. Again, a card that you can play on your opponent's turn when your opponent pops your Pokemon or your Impmon. For every 10 cards in your, it deletes level 4 or lower. But for every 10, you add level 1 to the level. So again, my magic number is 20. When you have 20 cards in trash, this can delete a level 6 or lower Digimon. This becomes a 4-cost fly bullet when you have 20 cards in your trash. It's outstanding. 4 copies of Mist Memory Boost. I was running this at 2 copies. I increased it to 4. This card is really strong. This card makes me feel like I always have a play in hand. When you drop this card, you mill 2, draw 1. So this card can mill your Beelzemons. This card can mill your Blast Modes. This card can mill your Death Slingers. So it can reduce its own cost. You can play you have the potential to play a Digimon off of this, and then you store 2 memory in the bank with this card. And a lot of times that's really good, because it lets you can go into your warp Beelzemon for you know, for 4, but you gain the extra memory from this by, you know, using the delay skill. This card really just fits this deck super well. And I was mad I didn't, you know, playing the tournament, I was mad I didn't play this at 4, so I'm really happy with it at 4. So then the last options we have double Jack Raid and double Calling from the Darkness. Calling from the Darkness in there to retrieve, you know, any extra options, cards that we need for, you know, play extensions, grab your Loimons if you mill them all. So that's really why that's in here. Jack Raid, again, it's another way to gain memory. You can pump Jack Raid up to, for, you know, to play it for 2 costs really easily in here. It's also a great security card. And then last but not least, we have the Tamer. The Tamer is going to be just the 3 copies of Ayamako. Again, you can retrieve this if you mill it off of the Doberman. But what Ayamako is, she's our memory. This is our memory setter, and when you attack with a Digimon, you can trash her to you can spin this to trash the top card of your deck, right? And if the card that you're attacking with is a Beelzemon, you can digivolve into blast mode from your trash for a cost of 3. So again, we're warping into Beelzemon. If we want to get our Tamer to the board, we're warping into Beelzemon. If we can swing with Beelzemon, we can swing, tap our Tamer, and then go right into a blast mode. So now we got a 15k body on the board, multiple security checks that our opponent has to deal with every turn. And this lets you go into it for 3. Sometimes you're going to be passing turns, but in the cases that you're not, we consider that a play extension. But that's the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think about the deck. I'll be coming out with a Evo line version of the deck, the one that doesn't really focus on the warp aspect of it. The focus is more on digivolving into the EX-2 Beelzemon. But this is Cardfight King. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on stream another time. Peace out.